All right, so welcome to Let's Talk About the Deep Stuff. I'm your host, Sean Kneese, and today my guest is my friend Eman Rimawi, who's been on the show
Hello.
before. And last time we talked about near-death experiences and the afterlife and different things related to that. Um, but I wanted to get more into like what you do like as an activist, like with your
Mhm.
organizing work. I know you do a lot of
Mhm.
work for
Mhm.
disability you and everything,
Mhm.
and I wanted to talk about that. I know before the show we talked a little bit. We had an interesting conversation about um, like grind mentality and like whether people should whether you need to, whether that's a healthy thing or not a healthy thing, or maybe
Mhm.
you don't need to like grind and just be
Right.
productive all the
Right.
time. Sometimes it's good to enjoy life too. But those are two very different things. But I'm kind of
Well,
hoping we can
I
get
actually think they're connected
yeah,
because a lot of people will grind until they acquire a disability. I can't tell you how many times folks have worked themselves nearly to death and now they're disabled because they let
yeah,
themselves get sort of bamboozled by the idea that they've got to be constantly working, constantly going, and not resting their body. So I think that's very much connected. And grind culture is whack. I don't want to work 80 hours and not be
yeah,
able to like live my life and do. I'm not a machine. I'm a human
yeah.
being, and human beings need to rest sometimes.
Yeah, like
So
I think like it'd be hard to enjoy life without like some bit
yeah,
of leisure.
yeah,
It's like,
yeah.
and then it's like, well, what could you be doing at this moment to your goal? It's like so like 24/7. Like it's good to work towards your
Hmm.
goals, but I think you need a time to rest and like kind of
Absolutely.
retreat
And
too.
and just like not not be always on. If you're constantly on and on and on and on, that does something to your brain and does something to your whole, I think it is very much connected even to I read an article a while ago about how trauma can be passed down through your DNA. And I think that's very much connected to that grind culture to like affect your DNA in a way that will affect your children and your grandchildren because you're passing down that kind of like and I don't think there's nothing wrong with being ambitious. There's nothing wrong with wanting to
Yeah,
achieve your goals. Just, keep in mind that if you're gonna grind until your wheels fall off, your wheels will fall off. Like that's just the way it works. You're a human
yeah,
being.
and like working 8 hours a week, 80 hours a week. How do you have time for like relationships or like enjoying? Like I
I
think you need
can
to have some time to enjoy life too.
Yeah, no, I can tell you, when I was in my
Yeah.
20s, I worked 80 hours a week and I tried to fit in partying in between that. And what happened? I had an awful lupus flare and then became paralyzed from the neck down and
Hmm.
then had to relearn how to walk again because I was working one full-time job that had me working 7 days a week and then two part-time jobs and helping my sister finish college and paying my own bills and doing my own thing and trying to keep up. It was between 21 and 23 I was doing that. I thought I was invincible. I could do anything. Silly me, thinking that I could just grind and then
Yeah.
my wheels fell off. So keep that as a lesson. I'm gonna be 40 next year, so I've learned. Keep it as a lesson, not to grind until your wheels fall off, because it's not worth it at the end of the day.
Yeah, and you've been busy lately a lot with the, you were talking about the activism work you're
Yeah,
doing.
yeah. I started my own organization called Diversity Includes Disability, and I am starting it out mostly doing equity and inclusion trainings for businesses and nonprofits about, hiring folks with disabilities, having inclusion in the office, what that inclusion even looks like, since disability is not a monolith and people are different and have different needs. In addition to that, I'm making sure that I wanted to bring some of the freelance stuff that I do because I do disability consulting for comic books and fiction books and plays, and I wanted to bring more of that into what we're going to be doing at Diversity Includes Disability. So it's going to be, training and equity and inclusion in comics and arts, and also, consulting people who may need some guidance around like how to interact with folks with disabilities, how to meet more folks, bringing people together in weight, like what I was doing with the fashion line that I was running years ago, bringing people together that don't normally get together. So, fashion designers, hip hop artists, folks with disabilities, bringing everybody together and creating new communities for people to interact with each other, where otherwise they would have been like, why would I be around this person? Like, no, we have things in common. Let's build on the things that we have in common and build more community. So, I am also planning on doing some more environmental justice stuff as well, considering climate change has sped the hell up recently. And, oftentimes folks with disabilities and seniors just get completely forgotten and ignored, as we saw a couple of Fridays ago in New York with the flooding.
Yeah.
And I fear that more of that's going to be happening. And unfortunately,
And with COVID too.
oh,
Like,
and with COVID,
yeah, yeah,
absolutely. It's like you guys, it's almost as if, one, people who didn't ever have any experience with disabilities and suddenly got COVID and then got long COVID are like, oh my God, this is a whole new thing. Like, no, babe, that's been going on for quite some time. You're just new to the party. Folks with disabilities have been ignored for
yeah,
decades, for centuries. And now you're learning about it. And I'm so sorry that you had to learn this way. We got your back. Don't worry about it. But just know that this is not new. This is new to you, but this is not new in general. And ableism, runs rampant all the time. And unfortunately, it shows up in, work and in school and in doctor's
yeah,
appointments and everywhere. And so my hope is that when, people, whether you acquire a disability or you are born with a disability, that you recognize that we're a community. There's a whole community, and we should be supporting each other instead of being so siloed. And yeah, unfortunately, people are, yeah.
and kind of, I noticed, at least what I've seen, is like kind of talking down to, well, not only like people with disabilities, but also like elderly and nursing homes.
Nursing homes twice, when I was 25 and then when I was 30. And I can tell you that that's absolutely true. And they tried that with me, and with me, that ain't gonna work. I'm a grown ass woman, and I'm not gonna be talked to like a child, and nor am I gonna let you do it to anyone else. But more importantly, I'm not gonna let you just simply like disrespect people and toss people aside. That's one of the reasons why. I mean, one of many reasons why I'm still not in a nursing home. But I I would set up shop in the main um, dining area every day when I was at both nursing homes with my laptop, and I would have my hours, and I'd have hours of operation where I was helping other residents to figure things out that the social workers there weren't doing. And the nursing homes hated it so much.
Hmm.
And I'm just like, look, if you guys did your job, if you actually hooked people up with the resources that they needed in the community to live independently, then I wouldn't need to be here. But because I came in here already knowledgeable about things in the community, and I'm an organizer, and if I see somebody who needs assistance, I'm going to step in and do it. I'm going to do it. That's it. And I know you're not helping me, knowing that I have, there's no reason to keep me in this nursing home, and they wanted to keep me there. And it's unfortunate that there were some other younger people there as well who were stuck in there for a lot
Hmm.
longer than I was there. I was there for 15 months.
Yeah,
And there's
yeah. I had an
people,
aunt that was she was in a nursing home from when she was 5 till like in her 70s. Like her whole life was in a nursing home because she had
that's
polio
wild.
and was crippled, and like
That's
yeah,
wild.
yeah,
And it's just like, it's amazing that, you know, I have a feeling that like a lot of folks want to go back to the old times to like lock us up in these factories and throw away the key
hmm,
and do, there's this place upstate, that was, what was it called? Willowbrook. Willowbrook Nursing Home, where that Geraldo Rivera story was decades ago. I think it was in the 80s or 90s when he was actually doing some reporting on the news. He went in there with his camera and showed every single thing, and people were horrified. But that is happens in so many nursing homes still around the country, and it's just like people keep thinking that they're separate from disability. That, oh, that's never gonna happen to me. What are you talking about? It's those people. Hey, I've been an amputee 10 years, and I never thought I was gonna be. So you can always become more disabled and you can always acquire more disabilities over time. And you can definitely, get sick along the way or get hit by a
Yeah.
freaking truck
It's
or
like something
whatever it
people don't want to
is.
face. In a way, it's kind of
And more
yeah,
importantly, we all age.
yeah,
We all age. And no, none of us are going to stay as
yeah.
um, physically fit and with it from when we're 20 to when we're 90. That just doesn't happen to anybody. So I
Yeah,
don't
it's kind of
understand how
like the
people,
the Buddha having to be aware of suffering.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I don't understand how
uh,
people think that they're completely exempt from it. Oh, I'm like, or that there are a bunch of senior folks that I know use the same walker that I use, take the same medication that I take, go to the same doctors, but they don't consider themselves disabled. And I'm just like, so what's the difference? What's the difference between you and me if we're doing the same exact thing, have the same exact equipment, seeing the same exact doctors? What's the difference? Oh, I don't know. You're younger in doing it. Oh, that's the difference? Oh, okay. You're just playing games. You're just able to own it and you'll have a better, interaction in the world rather than poo-pooing about what it is. You're gonna, part. I just don't understand what the
yeah,
logic is. And I was working for New York Lawyers for the Public Interest for several years, and I learned that if you don't use the words disabled, then that kind of exempts you from getting any kind of services or benefits or whatever it is that you need that you're entitled to by law. And so when people want to make up all these weird words for it, euphemisms for disability, or just say, "Oh, I'm just a senior. That's it, and that's it," then you're sort of separating yourself from whatever benefits that you could potentially get. And words and language matter. So that's why I go hard with it. I'm just like, listen, don't come out with this whole like,
yeah.
specially abled or differently abled or whatever. I don't know what the heck that means, but use the words. There's nothing wrong with saying the words. So
For the listeners, could you get into like your story and how you got started, your own experience, and also how you got started with activism for people with
sure.
disabilities? So,
I when I was 15, I mean, I started a lot of the things happened at the same time. I started feeling my lupus symptoms when I was 15, and I also started organizing when I was 15. And I don't know if they weren't originally connected, but I guess they sort of married together since it made sense for me to do both. But I started out with my organizing in my high school. I wanted to start, there was a standard performing arts club that was run by a teacher, and they just did some really boring stuff. And I was just like, can I start my own? And the principal was like, no. And I was like, no? Okay, I'm gonna show up with a few other students who want to start a club, and we're gonna protest outside of your office. And we did. And the principal was like, okay, 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 fine, you can have your dumb club. And I was like, okay. So, so we started our performance club, and it was to do like creative dance and spoken word poetry, and it wasn't like we weren't trying to do like Shakespeare plays. I was
yeah,
like, come on, there's enough of that shit. Let's do some poems. Let's do some. Let's get creative. And it
well,
was
something new rather than just doing the
yeah,
old, is what you're saying, or
something
yeah,
new, something that we were actually creating, not something that we were saying, "Oh, we're gonna do this play from this
yeah.
guy from
That's-
hundreds of years ago that does make no sense to anyone today." You
yeah, or
know?
like even in the arts and crafts classes, it's always like you follow these directions like 100%.
Mhm.
It's like
Yeah, so
how's that learning about making art? You're not creating. It's just
at all, at all. So I was like, you know what, let's and it was an awesome group. And out of that, I began doing a lot of spoken word poetry performances and all around the city. And even I went down to DC and Philly and a whole bunch of places performing all over the place. And all the while, my lupus was, just attacking me, attacking me, attacking me. And I didn't know what it was in the very beginning. So as I got progressively sicker, I finally figured out what was going on after my second heart attack because I had two heart attacks in the very beginning when I was 17. And it was sort of like a wake up call, like, oh snap, this isn't just achy joints or me losing a little bit of weight or just feeling a little tired. This is hardcore. And my doctor has a theory, well, my old doctor at the time had a theory saying that sometimes traumatic events induce autoimmune disorders. Like, it's already in your DNA, it's in your body, and whatever traumatic experience induces it. My father passed away right before my 15th birthday, and then right after I turned 15, I started showing symptoms. So they think that that was probably that. But I don't know. But I do know that stress does not help at all. So it kind of makes sense that, him passing away
Yeah.
contributed to this thing being as aggressive as it was. And it
Yeah.
hasn't been aggressive in a while, but from 15 to 32, it was just I was constantly in a state of flare because of all the stressful things that were going on in my life consistently. And so yeah, so it was from 17 till 24. I was in and out of the hospital a lot. I was, taking a ton of medication, but I was also working. I was trying to finish school, and I had very little support. My family wasn't great or supportive about any of it because they were like, "What's this? We don't know what this is. Oh, never mind. You're making it up. You're pretending. You're embellishing your symptoms." Meanwhile, I'm having heart attacks. I'm having strokes. I'm having organ failure. And I'm in the hospital constantly and meeting with these doctors constantly. And I'm like, you guys, what the hell am I making up? Like, really and truly, like, what am I making up? So it was that was, another sort of wake up call to say, you know what, I need to get around people who actually want to not only support me, but like believe me and won't kind of gaslight me into thinking that I'm making something up that's clearly real.
Denial on their part, like they didn't want to believe that your
It
health
was,
was decline.
yeah, I
Right.
think it was denial because, I went from being like, a very healthy, I mean, I wasn't a normal kid, but I was, I was regular, whatever. But I wasn't, I didn't need mobility devices. I wasn't taking a bunch of medication. I didn't need to sleep a whole bunch. I wasn't in and out of the hospital constantly. So they were suddenly like, oh, snap, oof, we don't want to deal with that. And my mom was one of the main culprits of not believing anything that was going on with me. And then once she found out that was real serious, then she totally flipped it around and got really like hyper focused on my health and then wanted to make everything about my health, which was bordering
Like,
on
what did she like
Munchausen.
micromanage or like
Very
she
much so. And it
yeah.
was like, you are annoying the hell out of me and you need to back up off me. Like, just let me live. Let me, please. And sometimes, which is, I mean, my mother's a whole other character, but sometimes she would use my health as a way to get people to send her money, which is awesome for your mother to use you as for a sort of like scam to make money off of you. And so she would constantly post pictures of me on her Facebook, especially after I became an amputee, because I was that out. Now I was a cash cow. Now she was like, "Oh yeah, I could really get some money." And would say, "Oh, my daughter's so sick. Oh, please give me money, donate here." And I had to tell her like 4 or 5 different times, like, "Ma, don't do that. First of all, you're not doing that for me. You're not trying to help me out. You're trying to help yourself out. But more importantly, you don't do anything else for me at all except try to use me to make money, and that's not okay." So she finally stopped, but it was just like, why are you doing that? Um, and the rest of my family, I mean, my siblings are over the years they've gotten much better. As I mean, I'm the oldest, so they were younger than me and didn't know how to even handle it until they got older, which is fine. I understand they had to mature, so that's fine. And then the rest of my family is sort of indifferent about me and kind of just, they acknowledge me, they're around, but they don't go out of their way they don't go out they don't do anything for me at all. And they're just constantly surprised that I'm still around and alive and kicking. And also just not just surviving, but that I'm thriving and I'm doing well. They're constantly surprised to see that. And I'm just like, well, what did you think I was gonna do? Shrivel up and die because you didn't come help me to do something? No, I figured it out. By my damn self because you guys are useless. So, and folks do not like when you try to hold them accountable for their lack of care. But at this point, I really don't. I really don't care about that because I'm going to stand in my truth. And, I don't care if people don't like that I'm being honest about them trying to use me to scam people or stealing things from me or stealing spaces from me or trying to swindle me out of money or whatever it is. And it's just like, why would you think that's a good idea to do to me? But so
So, were you involved in activism for the disabled before your lupus, or did that kind of through having lupus you became interested in disability
I
rights?
mean, I was 15, so I didn't know much
Yeah.
about disability anything. And once I was diagnosed with my lupus when I was 17, the chronic illness world has a very weird relationship with disability. And oftentimes they don't want to associate with disability. And I'm just kind of like, but why? And then that's connected to like the senior thing. Like we use the same mobility devices, we're taking the same medication, we're seeing the same doctor. So what is the difference? Especially when it comes to like chronic illnesses, like lupus, a lot of these folks are my age or even a little bit younger. And it's
Yeah.
just like, okay, so the same thing that seniors are saying to me, you can't say that same thing because they're older, but you're not. So why don't you consider yourself to have a disability? Oh, well, I don't use a wheelchair. The wheelchair does not only mean disability, you guys. Like it's not just a wheelchair end all be all. Like that's it. Like so, it's and I honestly think it's because we as a society see disability as less than. We see it as something that means you're diminished or you're damaged goods or you're inferior. And so if you have a chronic illness, some people are already feeling that way. And so they
Mhm.
don't want to say, okay, I'm going to add a disability onto my title too, so that people can really look at me sideways. Like, I don't care. If people want to look at me sideways, they can look at me that way. I don't care.
Yeah,
At
was
this
it?
point,
For some reason, I just thought FDR, like when he was president. I
exactly.
know the day they tried to hide that, like he was
Mhm.
because he couldn't
Mhm.
walk at one point. They tried
Mhm.
to hide it because like he didn't want.
Mhm.
He thought it was showing weakness or whatever.
And
But
do you
yeah,
know how powerful it would have been to see a president who was a wheelchair user? Like but they weren't thinking that way. Or even JFK had a chronic illness.
oh
Or
really? I didn't know that. But yeah,
yeah, he had a chronic illness
yeah.
and no one ever talked about it. He took medication, he saw doctors, he sometimes he would be so exhausted that he wouldn't be able to stand up or walk or
Oh
move.
wow.
Like it was serious. And I wish more people talked about it because that would empower people so much and normalize it. There are a billion disabled folks in the world, and there are nearly 2 million in New York City or New York State, really. And it's just like people keep acting like there are like granted they may have never seen an amputee in person, but like I'm the only one on earth. I'm not the only one on earth. There's more than me here. So it's not it's just I think that if we normalize it, if we make it look like, you know what, there's so many more people in here than you, and it's not just physical disabilities too. I've seen so many articles where people are like pissed off that there's more diagnoses over like mental health disorders or cognitive disabilities, and it's just like, do you know how much of a relief it
Yeah,
is when you're diagnosed, when you can figure out what this thing is that's been messing with your
yeah,
mind, that's been making things hard. You can finally take a medication or see a doctor and get the help that you need. What a
yeah.
relief that does! People, they're not
Yeah.
thinking about that. They're like, oh,
But
there's so
but
many
I guess like
diagnoses.
sometimes with like mental illness, like the challenge with that is like then it's harder to get other people to see because it's
Mhm.
something that's not
Mhm.
as visible. Like people can't always
Mhm.
see like what that person's going through
Mhm.
because like sometimes they can function well and then like you don't see
Yeah,
what's going on with their yeah
absolutely. I mean, I still have people who think that my lupus was suddenly cured when I became an amputee. And I'm like, "How? What? That makes 0 sense." No, it is still there, and it makes me being an amputee much harder, and I don't know why folks think that that suddenly disappeared. No,
yeah
that's not how science and bodies work. So, but it's just wild to me that there's some people who are like, they don't want people, they think that there's some kind of like secret conspiracy with folks getting diagnosed with these things. And what they're failing to understand is that people want a diagnosis so that they can live their lives because it's so difficult for them to function. And when they have a diagnosis and can actually live and function, then they can live their life in whatever way that they want to live it instead of being a prisoner in their brains or a prisoner in their body.
yeah.
So it's like,
So then they know how to treat it and know how to
yeah,
yeah
yeah. So,
yeah but do you think because I know you were talking before about like people kind of exploiting um,
mhm.
people with disabilities, or do you think sometimes there's people like there's a bit of narcissism, like people are like, oh, I'm gonna like it's more for their own ego, like oh, I'm gonna show
Oh
that I'm
God,
compassionate.
yes.
Yeah,
Oh God, yes. You know how many people I've met who are like have a savior complex with me, thinking that they're gonna come in and swoop on in and save you, man. We gotta save you. Save me from what? What are you trying to save me from? But please spell it out. Explain it to me like I'm 5 years old, because when I say it like that, I assume that they're thinking something that's really wild and really like offensive, and I'll get to it if I ask very specific pointed questions. And there are a lot of folks, I've been saying this for quite some time now, and people really hate it when I say it, but there's a lot of performative allies out there, and these performative allies just want the attention, they just want the clout, they just want the pat
yeah,
on the shoulder. They don't want to actually do any of the work. And I have a huge problem with people like that who are like, "Oh yeah, I'm totally an ally. I donated to this thing, but you did nothing else. Nothing else."
yeah.
That is not an allyship at all. At all. And I don't think people understand that there's a distinct difference. And I've encountered so many people like that for so many things. And I'm like, you guys, this is not, do I need to do an allyship 101 workshop for you? Because this is not allyship right now. And oh, people really hate, especially liberals. Oh my God.
Yeah, I was
They hate
actually
it
thinking that made me
so
think of the term
much.
as like limousine liberals, like people like yeah,
Yeah. I mean, at least with like Republicans or conservative folks, they'll tell me to my face that they wouldn't piss on me if I were on fire. And I respect that more than you coming at me pretending that you care and then not doing anything. And that to me is disgusting. That to me makes you just as bad as those Republicans who wouldn't piss on me if I were on fire. So you can both kick rocks barefoot. That's it. Like I'm at this point I'm like really, really and truly disgusted with our human with human beings, because we're just awful to each other, and it's like there's no reason for it. There's absolutely no reason for it, and I don't understand. I really don't understand.
so what are some of the issues that the disabled are I know you talk a lot about like accessibility is like a
Yes. So accessibility is across the board accessibility. So when I first started doing more on specifically focusing on disabled folks, I was focusing on accessible transportation and paratransit. And oh gosh, I mean, it was a dumpster fire 8 years ago, and it's still a dumpster fire. Um, and trying to fight with the MTA about it is the steepest uphill battle ever in creation. Um, but more than that, there's also accessibility around the city. I've been talking to the public advocate's office for several months already, helping them with their campaign to change how we talk about affordable housing, to make it affordable and accessible, because they've been constantly focusing on affordable, affordable, affordable. And it's like, okay, that's awesome. But if it's not accessible, what's the point? And I always use this example. When I was living up at the tippity top of the Bronx in Throgs Neck, We had an affordable apartment, but it wasn't accessible. And so I had to hop up 25 steps every day and hop down 25 steps every day when I had to go to work. That didn't help me. There were some times when I couldn't do it. And,
Mhm.
I was like, well, okay, well, and then we finally found, the place we're living now, which is completely accessible, but it took money to do that. It
Yeah.
took money and resources to do that. And unfortunately, our city claims to be equitable, claims to care about folks who are disenfranchised, claims to care about folks with disabilities. But then when you actually look at what they're doing, they're not supporting anybody to do anything. They're lining their pockets to do whatever they want to do, but forgetting about the rest of us.
Do
So,
you think it's ignorance, or is it what is it?
I think it's ignorance, but I think it's also they're ignoring it, and they're thinking somebody else is going to take care of it, so I don't have to do it. Except nobody else is taking care of it, and so the community is basically coming together to assist each other to get these things done. But we don't have enough resources or money or connections to do any of that. We can do little bits here and there, but we need the structure and the funding from our city, from our state, from the feds. Like that's what we need here, especially because we saw that a couple of weeks ago with the flooding. Our infrastructure is on its way out, from the MTA to these friggin' buildings to some of the buses to some of the streets and the sidewalks and our plumbing and all that. Everything is so old and outdated and not accessible to use. And it's just like, you guys, 20 years from now, New York may, I don't even know. I don't even know, but I'm hoping for the best, but I don't expect much because I see what is going on and I don't think that anything is going to be done. And I think it's because their lives are okay and they're assuming other people's lives are too. And
Yeah.
I have experienced that with a lot of big wigs in the disabled community who are who work for some of these really big agencies and get humongous paychecks. And they often assume, oh, I'm doing fine, so you should be doing fine. Oh, so you're making $300,000
Hmm.
a year, but this other person is making SSDI, which is 13,000 a year, and you think they're living the same way you're living. Really?
Yeah. So I guess it's kind of
Really?
like someone who's like, I haven't. If someone says they haven't experienced racism, so there isn't
Mm-hmm.
racism or
Mm-hmm.
something.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh God, don't get me
Yeah.
started on that. Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
I've had so many people tell me, oh no, that couldn't have happened. That's not real. That's not possible because they've not experienced it. And I'm like, okay, thank you so much. You performative ally, you. Thank you. It's just rampant. So like accessible transportation, accessible and affordable housing, also accessible. Like there's so many inaccessible things around the city. For example, there are so many hospitals that aren't fully accessible. And I have a huge, huge, huge problem with that. Years ago, I discovered that one of the New York Presbyterian campuses wasn't allowing paratransit to go there. And I was like, wait, a hospital's not allowing paratransit? What? So, me, I picked up the phone and I called Accessoride to talk to the vice president of Accessoride. And I was like, hey, and it was Mike Cosgrove at the time. So this was a few years ago. I was like, hey, did you know that there's a New York Presbyterian campus that's not letting Accessoride go there? And he was like, really? Oh my gosh. So he calls the president, and then we have some of our lawyers go to the meeting. After 4 or 5 meetings, it was fixed. An Accessoride can go there, and it was just what did they say, a clerical error or some crap like that. So no one ever paid attention. No one was paying attention, and people had to walk friggin' a mile between the hospitals to get to another doctor.
Well,
And how like and it fixed so many people's lives to be able to say, oh wow, I can just go straight there, walk right there, so easy, so simple. And every time I'm at that campus and I see an Accessoride bus, I'm like, I did that. And that makes me so freaking happy that I was able to bring that to people, just noticing. And it took 5 seconds to call to fix that. And I wish that more people saw that they can be powerful. They can make change. All it takes is doing one little step, and you can fix it for. There's 180,000 people who use Accessoride.
Hmm.
Like that
It's like so. It's a lot of it's things that are so. You're saying a lot of it's things that are simple to do that would make a big difference.
yes, there's a
Yeah.
lot of things that are simple to do. Or like, with the hospitals, there's so many especially New York Presbyterian, there's so many bathrooms that are not accessible. And I'm like, you guys, it's a freaking hospital. Why don't you have it be accessible? And I noticed that all they have to do, make the doorway just a few inches wider, make the bathroom just a few inches wider, put the grab bars a little, closer to the toilet. It's not difficult, and it's also not rocket science, and it shows you how little people think about folks with any kind of disabilities when they're building anything. And that's one of the reasons why I've been working with architects too around universal design, because it's important and everyone will benefit from it. Everyone.
Do you think it's them not having connections with people with disabilities, or is it just like them not wanting to look at that? Or...
I think it's both. I think it's both. I've encountered both. I think there's some people who just don't have any connection, don't see it in their day-to-day life, and so they're not. It's completely out of their purview. But there's some people who have seen it and they don't think it's their problem. They think somebody else is going to handle it. There's a lot of people who think Accessorize is free, and they're like, "Oh, you guys get that for free, don't you?" No, bitch, we have to pay for it. What the hell are you talking about? It's free. There was a one point when I was working with New York lawyers where I was paying $350 a week to use Accessoride
Oh,
because we
wow.
don't get discounts. And I was going to meetings all over the city, everywhere, and Staten Island. All 5 boroughs I was going to meetings in, and to the office, and home. This is when I was living in Throgs Neck, so I was constantly in that damn vehicle going everywhere. And writing it 7 to 8 times a day adds up, especially if you're not getting any discounts. And, I had to say, you know what, you guys, like, it makes so much sense for you to make sure Accessory customers can get discounts. And that's how Fair started. But I don't qualify for it. So, it helps for some people, but not for everybody. And the point is like not to make everything so ridiculously expensive for people who are using it, which, the MTA has a tendency to do, unfortunately. So, yeah.
Yeah. And that's what you said, 350 a week. I guess that's even, that makes Uber seem
Yeah.
cheap.
And I was just like, I might as well take a damn Uber, you guys. Like, what the hell? It's wild. But yeah, there's so many inaccessible things. And
what about like a public transportation? Is there, I know like usually there's like one handicap spot. I don't know if there's like, is it like not enough, or what can you say about that? Like with trains
they're working on it, and one of the reasons that they're working on it, I'm on an advisory council for Transit Accessibility ACTA, and we've been on it for 5 years. And since Andy Byford was at the MTA and the train daddy left, and then we stayed with ACTA, and we try to make sure that we bring as many points of view of disability to that group. At this point, though, I honestly don't know if we're actually being listened to. But one can hope, and I think that because I've been part of that group, I've been able to make some substantial changes with Accessoride, which is with the paratransit company, which is great. And we've been improving stuff on the trains as well, so making more spaces for folks with disabilities to sit on the train, making sure announcements are actually clear and not garbled, making sure the signage is actually plain language and not confusing, making sure that the digital signage is clear. That all takes time, and that all took a lot of meetings and figuring out what worked and what didn't work. So it's and more than that, more than the accessibility on the train and on the buses, we've also been making sure that they're not just focusing on elevators in the train station, because that's not all that's needed. And I think oftentimes people associate elevators with accessibility and think, okay, that's it, we're done. But there's so much more to accessibility than just wheelchairs or physical disabilities. And I wish more people saw it that way, that there are folks who are deaf, there's folks who are blind, folks with cognitive disabilities, mental disabilities, and they all need access to. And, my hope is that if I'm enough of a squeaky wheel, I'll make a difference. I don't know. But I've been a squeaky wheel for coming up on 26 years. And I don't know. I don't know how else to be. So.
And you getting to your, I know you're writing in like your poetry. I know you wrote a poem about like how you felt like people didn't see you as a person anymore once you had a disability. What can you say
Yeah.
about that?
Yeah, when you have for years my lupus was invisible, and so no one ever thought that I had anything, and I was often just ignored. And then when it became more visible, then suddenly my consent was taken away. Like, people don't ask at all when you have a disability. They just grab your wheelchair, grab your walker, grab your arm, and I'm just like, I don't know you. Don't touch me. But also, like, there's a whole campaign in the UK right now that says ask, don't touch. And I wish that we could bring
Like
something
me,
like
like
that.
before they grab you to like help or whatever. Or what do you say?
Yeah, yeah, or help. They want to
Yeah,
help, but their
yeah,
help may not be helpful. And I've had
yeah.
plenty of people basically shove their way into my, stratosphere, circumference, and I'm just kind of like, what are you doing? And the one thing I hate so much is when people dive in front of me to open a door, and I'm just like, okay, if I actually needed someone to help me, nobody would actually help me to do the damn door. But because I'm walking around with this walker, you automatically assume that I need something, and I don't need anything. And if I needed something, I'd ask. But when I do ask, there's often nobody around, so I figure out how to do things myself. And people get so pissed off. They get so angry that I'm just now, oh, thank you so much. Oh my God, you opened the door for me. Oh, I'm so weak and helpless. Oh my God. Hey, I'm just like you guys.
No.
Like, and there's been so many people who have been so offended that I'm like, oh, thank you, I got it. Thank you. Whatever. Like, it's amazing to me. It's so amazing to me how people inject themselves into my life, disrupt what I'm doing, and they get offended when I'm like, I got it. Like, let me be.
Hmm.
And
But
and
you think like they want to just make themselves look good or something, or what?
yes, it's all
Yeah.
about them. It has nothing to do with me. It's all about how it's their egos they want me to fluff up their egos and make them feel good about their one good deed for the day. I'm not going to be your good deed for the day. Go find someone else to do something for. There's plenty of people on the street, plenty of homeless folks who need help, who actually need your assistance, not me. So, you want to pick someone who needs something? Go look. There's plenty of people.
And I know you also mentioned that you felt like people didn't talk to you like a person or two. And
Yeah,
yeah.
or they don't if I'm out with somebody, they talk to them and won't talk to me. Um, and I've had tons of times where I'm like, yeah, I speak, I can answer questions, and then that offends people too. So yeah.
So where could people keep updated with the stuff you're working on? And I guess as a closing thing, like what do you hope for the future?
Hmm. Well, I'm off of. I'm not really on social media much these days. I am on Instagram, so they can find me on the Eman Rimawi show. I like cats. Um, and the Diversity Includes Disability organization is getting underway. I'm working on the website now. Um, but just stay tuned, and I will have information out there. And if you all want to just Google me, you can totally Google me, and I speak all over the place. So check out some of my speaking engagements that I have. I have a few coming up. Nothing concrete yet, but I do have a few coming up. So yeah. So I'll let you know, and you can let people know too, or whatever works.
Cool. Yeah, and that could be a cool podcast. The E-Man Rimawi show.
Yeah, why not?
Well, yeah, thanks you for coming on. It was good
Mhm.
because, like, yeah, last time it was a totally different topic, so it was cool to talk about something that was more personal to you too, and all that, and
Yeah,
like what you do and everything.
absolutely. I
Yeah.
appreciate it. Thank you.
Oh yeah, no problem. And if you want to keep up to date with future episodes of Let's Talk About the Deep Stuff, I'm on Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. And yeah, that's about it. I'll catch you on the next one.
Bye, y'all.